Alright y'all, let's get started. I'm here to talk about the legend of Sigurd and Gudrún. I just read this book recently and I really enjoyed it. You might be wondering what it is, so I'll give you a little rundown here. It's written by J.R.R. Tolkien. This was actually published after he died by his son, Christopher Tolkien, who edited this book. Essentially what it is it's a collection of Old Norse poetry that he translated into English, and he used to teach, I don't know if it's at Oxford or Cambridge, but when he was a professor, Tolkien used to teach on Norse mythology, and so he had lecture notes, and so his son Christopher went through his lecture notes, he took his translations, and he mentions in the introduction to the book that he wasn't sure if his father intended to publish these at some point, but he compiled them, kind of cleaned them up, put them in an order that he thought made sense, and yeah, so here we are. He released them. It's interesting how it's set up, so I'll go ahead and kind of talk about that for a second. It's actually very helpful the way it's set up, because you can see obviously there's like the poetry in the book, but like first we have the introduction, and then we kind of have what the purpose of the book is and a section of poems. And what's cool is Christopher Tolkien mentions that Old Norse poetry is very different and very unique of that time. It's hard to always convey exactly what those authors were trying to accomplish, aside from, you know, certain, it's very like impactful, it's very intense. So just trying to convey why they wrote that way or why we think they wrote that way versus, you know, counterparts in the world who were doing poetry at the time. So these are, and guys forgive me, I'm probably gonna butcher a lot of these names here. I don't speak Old Norse or Icelandic or German or those Germanic languages. Some of it has to do with characters I'm kind of familiar with, you know, like Odin and Loki and Thor, you know. If you've seen the Marvel movies, I'm sure you are a little bit familiar with those characters as well, but you know how they live in Asgard. There's talk of Valhalla or Valhalla. The primary like characters in this book are not strictly those characters. There's a lot of reference to those characters and how the main characters in these stories relate to them, and how some of them are almost like descendant of Odin. So these stories are translations of various sets of poetry, like I believe it's called like the Volsung Saga or Volsunga Saga, the Lay of the Volsungs, or like the poems of the Edda, the Eddaic poems. You've got these stories about Sigurd, who I believe is the son of Sigmund or something like that. He's, I believe, in love with Brynhild or Brynhildr, and there's a point where he has to slay a dragon. He gets gold from that dragon. The dragon has a treasure hoard, but it's cursed, and so that sets off a series of events for him. He ends up going to this other country, and someone there gives him a drink. He gets enchanted, and through that enchantment, they basically have him marry the princess there, whose name is Gudrún. He's unaware of what's happening because he was committed to Brynhild, and so that sets off a chain of events that's very intense and dramatic and dark and lots of death, and people kill this country and then people kill people from that country, sort of thing. Brynhild, I believe, is like, it's not totally apparent in the poetry until you get to one of the commentaries, but that she is most likely a Valkyrie because she seems to have magical powers. And near the end, you know, a little bit of spoilers here, but Gudrún kind of takes care of everybody in a very intense and violent way. To talk a little bit more about the structure of the book, it's pretty cool. So you've got, you know, these very kind of succinct lines in these fairly small stanzas, and then between each section of poems there will be like a commentary. This is like the commentary on again, I'm gonna butcher this, so I'm just not even gonna say it, but I don't even know if you can read it there. It's commentary, which is really cool. So like, this is the kind of poetry that's already difficult to read. It's translated from Old Norse languages, and it's still a lot of old like English words in it as well. And Christopher Tolkien does a good job of like explaining what he believes his father, J.R.R. Tolkien, was trying to potentially accomplish with these things, how he was trying to get the stories to flow, the themes that he was drawing out from them, and the characters that he found important, and you know how certain words might have had a couple of meanings and he would go with this meaning because he felt like it fit the character. So it's very fascinating stuff. And then and during these commentaries as well, you learn even more about, say, things that aren't included in the poems themselves, but maybe they were in his lecture notes, you know, just about the mythology, the poetry in general. And so you'll read a commentary, and then you'll get to, you know, more poetry and so on, and then, you know, kind of a commentary and appendix and notes at the end to wrap everything up. So yeah, it's great. There's also, with the Dragon Horde, there's a golden ring in there that a lot of people want, I think, including Loki. And there's a dwarf at one point. I think he might have been guarding the dragon's cave or the dragon's treasure or something to that effect. But what's neat is, like, you can see here how a lot of these stories, a lot of the myths and the legends in these stories most likely inspired quite a few elements of Tolkien's writing for things like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. You know, I think Tolkien did a good job of, you know, borrowing things from other mythologies, but telling them in a way that was very unique and fresh. After reading this, I don't feel like he just like copied anything directly from here, you know what I'm saying? But I can see the inspiration, which is really cool. And I mean, that's how most stories are told. You know, a lot of the stories we enjoy are all pretty similar if you really think about it. It's just, you know, we look at it from different angles and we add new perspectives and we try to kind of keep it fresh. So, you know, not knocking him in any way there. I honestly think it's extremely creative and, you know, brilliant how he can do that. I would say if you have never read Tolkien before, I don't know if I would suggest starting with this book, but it wouldn't discourage you from reading it either. It is a little difficult. It requires some focus, kind of like his translation of The Green Knight. But he's such a good writer in that even though he's translating, he can take the stories and the words and still write them in a way that has this nice kind of flow to it, this nice rhythm that is really engaging, and he chooses words very carefully, and they're very descriptive, and they kind of just like light up in your mind and give you these images of what's happening in the story. So even though it may seem a little like, oh, I don't know if I can, if you just kind of stick with it and keep going, it's really cool. And again, that's why the commentaries are so cool, because right after the poems, there's even more clarification after the fact. And I was surprised at how much I actually understood. And at the end of it, it was just cool to see in those commentaries, like little bonus stuff, like little like, oh, and this also could mean this, or this, here's more to the story. And I was like, oh, that fleshes out that story even more. So that was great. Say you are interested in poetry, or you like poetry or something like that, I would definitely recommend it. I've actually been reading a lot of poetry at the moment because I'm also just trying to write poetry, and so I'm just trying to get familiar with different styles, and you know, it's just cool. I like the words. It's beautiful. It tugs at your heart in a different way than just reading other types of literature. So it's just a different experience. So if you're looking for a different reading experience even, I would just say, you know, check this out. That's pretty much it, guys. It's a great book. I highly recommend you check it out. I'm reading some other books right now, so hopefully I'll get some more reviews in pretty soon. So if you've read this book, please leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about it. If you're reading anything else, feel free to drop a comment about that. And if you have any book suggestions, let me know. I'm always interested to know what people are reading or what they think is a good read. And if you like this content, please let me know. If you want to see something different, let me know that too. If you feel like someone else would like this, feel free to share it with them. Just throw it out on the internet somewhere and we'll see if it sticks. So thanks for checking out the video, guys. I always appreciate you taking the time to watch these. Have an incredible day. You're amazing, and I'll see you in the next one. Wow.